The last thing we're going to cover is chromes. Now a chrome is something that applies to your issue as a whole. It's a layer that the users can bring up to aid them to navigate around the issue. So it might have a jump to a contents button, a button to exit your issue, a scrubber to help them navigate through their pages, all those kinds of things that are independent of the pages. It just helps your user get around the issue a little bit easier. So if I take you into my Finder window, alongside the InDesign documents, I've got this folder called Extras. Now anything you put in the Extras folder will be detected by Futurefolio and copied into your final build. So inside that, I've got a file called Chrome Pad Portrait, pretty self-explanatory, and it's an XML file. And every single asset that's referenced within that XML file also sits inside this folder. So let's open that up. This is what a Chrome file looks like. And it's talking about bars, items within each of those bars. This probably doesn't make much sense at this stage. Now, let's open up one of our documents within InDesign. Let's go with our original slideshow document. Now, because we've got that extras folder in there now, let's build to the simulator directory. And now if we bring up Previewer and choose that page, this time when we tap across the bottom of the page, this Chrome pops up. Now those of you who read Edge magazine might recognize this. This is their Chrome that I've stolen shamelessly from their magazine. It's got a button for the contents page. It can jump you back to the previous page. They've got a share button that will bring up an action sheet saying, do you want to share to Facebook, Twitter or email? Home will take you out of that issue back into your container app, and it's got a list of their sections within their magazine. It's also got a page scrubber, which in this case we've only got one page, so it's not very exciting. Let's close that document down, and let's this time do a batch build. Let's choose our documents folder. Extras lives within there, so this is going to get included on every single one of these page builds. And let's output it to our page builds folder again. And let's just let that run for a minute. And you might notice, if you're really fast, this little stage of importing extra files. That just means it's detected a folder called Extras inside that Documents folder, and for each page it's importing the contents of that Extras folder into the page build. Now don't worry, when you come to do your issue build, you're not going to get 15 whatever different versions of those same files. It will detect that they're the same files and it'll just overwrite them each time. So you only get them once in your final issue. Now that's finished, we can go back to our issue build. Let's change our issue location up from here and go back into our page builds folder. And we've got combine output on at the moment, so when we build, in actual fact most of our pages are sitting in unused pages, so it's only going to build slideshow, carousel and example actions, which is fine. It's enough to see what we want to see. We're going to page builds. We've just built build output combined, so let's copy that into our simulator directory so we can look at it in the previewer. Give it a name, let's call it Chrome. Choose it from here, Chrome. This time when we tap on the bottom of the page, because we've got 3 pages, you can see there's 3 now in the scrubber, and the users can tap on those to jump to each of those pages. So that's Chrome in a nutshell. It's quite a flexible file. There's all sorts of settings you can have in here. And I'm not going to go through everything, but the basic principle of a Chrome, you can see here we have a menu button. That's the thing that we tapped on across the bottom. It's invisible, it has no background, its initial state is on, so it's always switched on, and it has within that a toggle button with this position, with a blank image. There's no image associated with that button, but because it's a toggle button, it means it'll toggle on the rest of the Chrome, which is what you see here. By default, a dimming view will come up, and the bottom bar here, You can set a position when it's off screen, a position when it's on screen, a size, whether you can swipe it onto the screen, an image if you want to. You can see we've got here a scrubber. We've got various buttons set up. Those are the names of the assets for when the buttons are selected and unselected. So if you want to, you can edit this file manually if you speak XML. There's one other option for you in terms of creating Chromes. You might have noticed when we've gone into the previewer, there's this other option called Creator. Now in general, you're not going to use Creator because that's a different tool for doing the same job as what the InDesign plugin does. But in this case, Creator has a Chrome editor which doesn't yet exist within the plugin. So if we go into here, this is your basic Creator screen. We want to add a new issue. We're not actually going to create an issue, but we're just going to create a dummy one so that we can modify our Chrome within that. So let's create a blank issue. Doesn't matter what we call it. Let's call it demo. Here it is. We'll go into there. And what this has done, if we go back here, we go back to our simulator directory, you'll see we now have a folder called Editing Issues. And inside that is demo. So this is our issue. You can see it's created as a chrome.xml. And what we'd actually quite like to modify is the Chrome that we included in our documents folder. This Chrome here. So let's copy all of this and paste it into here. Bin off that Chrome file that it created by default. Back in Creator here, if we go to this button here, we get Chrome Editor. Ignore everything else within Creator. We're not creating an issue within Creator today. We're using the InDesign plugin. We just want it for the Chrome Editor. So let's bring that up. It's detected that we've got a pad portrait Chrome and it's loaded that in for us. So you can see here, you've got a more visual representation of everything that we saw in that XML button there. You've got a menu button across the bottom. You can adjust the size of it here. And inside that menu, you have a toggle button. The toggle button causes the bottom bar to come up, which initially is off screen. That's why you couldn't see it to begin with. Within that, it's got a scrubber, it's got buttons. Double tap on these buttons. You can set their positions, their sizes, the images to use for them, and then you can choose these effects here. So these are the options you have for your Chrome buttons. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with it. Jump to sections, jump to pages, previous page, next page, show a table of contents of your entire issue, close it, all this kind of stuff. And you might remember when we covered off text objects, we talked about having live text where you can increase and decrease the font size. And this is where you can add buttons for the users to do that. And any text that you've marked as scalable will respond to that in turn. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do within your Chrome, and it's quite important to include one. By default, when you build your issue, you go here and it'll say add default Chrome if needed. That's really just for testing purposes. You don't really want to ship your final issue with a default Chrome because it's not going to look on brand. It's not really going to do what you want it to do. It's there for a nicety to enable you to test your issue with a default Chrome, and then you can add the Chrome as a final stage. So that's Chromes, and that's the final piece of the puzzle that you need to make some really truly amazing digital magazines that your users are going to absolutely love. So go away, have a play with the tools, see what you can create, and send us the results.